This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.
Hi, I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm here to tell you a little bit about SW Radio Africa, which is a radio station I set up in the UK due to the media repression in my country. We broadcast on shortwave and the internet. As you can see from the map, Zimbabwe borders South Africa. 2 million people have fled there in the last 10 years due to the oppression back home. 1 million have fled to other countries in the world, and there are 2 million internally displaced. The figures are very similar to the Syrian figures currently, but they don't get quite as much publicity. Those internally displaced people live in an extraordinarily beautiful country. I could leave my house in Harare, drive 5 hours, and sit and watch elephant. Go to Victoria Falls, truly one of the most beautiful places in the world. Those are the Chilocho Cliffs at Gonorrhoea National Park. When the sun goes down, they gleam a brilliant red. And these are the jacarandas that line the avenues in the capital, Harare. For months, you walk on a carpet of purple flowers. And this beautiful country has been under the control of Robert Gabriel Mugabe since 1980. He is now 89 years old. His supporters say he has been sent by God to guide us because his name is Gabriel, the name of an angel. For 14 years, I worked for the state broadcaster, the only broadcaster allowed, and everything was fine until 1997, when the wheels came off the country in a big way. Massive economic decline due to years of mismanagement. And there were the first food riots, so I opened the phone lines during those food riots and allowed people to speak freely. Apparently Mugabe was listening, he really didn't like it. I was physically removed from the studio and fired. So that was the end of my radio career. So in 2000, I went to the Supreme Court and challenged the government's broadcasting monopoly and won the right to set up the first independent radio station. It didn't last very long, about 6 days. My house, the studio, was surrounded by armed paramilitary, and these were some of the headlines of the time. As you can see, the new broadcasting regulations were immediately signed to make sure nothing as appalling as that would ever happen again. And anti-Western propaganda really started. It was alleged that the BBC were behind this to do this massive blitz, that that's supposed to be me, on top of all the other broadcasters broadcasting hate speech. So it really didn't get a lot of good press. The press oppression increased exponentially at that time. That's international correspondent Andy Meldrum. He was forcibly removed from the country. That is the bombing of the Daily News printing press that was an independent newspaper. And this is what Mugabe made clear on democracy. So we were stuck under a dictator. So there was only one thing to do, and that was start another radio station. So I assembled a small team and came to the UK in 2001, and we started broadcasting in December. We have over the years managed to create a good listenership, and our reports are regarded as extremely credible, and we do our best to maintain the highest levels of journalistic practices. We expose the human rights abuses and the plunder that's going on. And we have a website that people can access, and we broadcast live. You can go to the podcast, or you can read our news online. That is our opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai. That is his before picture. This is his after picture. He was picked up in 2008 after winning the elections, savagely beaten in police cells. His skull was fractured. And the guy who took that picture was an old work colleague of mine from TV days. He was killed for taking that picture. A gang came to his house, and he turned to his wife and he said, "I am dead." And his body was found 2 days later. The violence was horrendous at this time. Mugabe was enraged that Tsvangirai had won the election. and savage beatings started. These are some of the more palatable pictures that I can show you. But it was well orchestrated, and it was very comprehensive. Those are the police involved in it. The favorite thing was to make you lie face down in a soccer pitch and then beat you on the buttocks, because they beat you for 4 or 5 hours and create these giant holes and then pour a herbicide in that. They used paraquat. We have an MP who's called Mr. Paraquat because he was so skilled at that. So it's really thought out, very comprehensive, and there's a suburb outside Harare where they estimate that every adult there was beaten like that, 20,000, 30,000 people. So it was huge terror throughout the country. The world didn't know what to do. SADC, the Southern African Development Community, moved in and pressured Mugabe to go into a coalition government with Morgan Tsvangirai, even though Mugabe had lost the election. I assume they thought if they didn't do that, the violence would just increase. So this coalition was formed in 2009 and was a joke from the start. Mugabe maintained all the power, controlled the security services, controlled the courts. So nothing really changed. It was just sort of an illusion of calm. That coalition came to an end on July the 31st this year, when Mugabe spectacularly rigged the elections and gave himself a massive majority. And it's not to do just with holding on to power. It's to do with spectacular plunder, which is something that people tend to forget. We try and expose this. This was one of the exposés we did. That's the daughter of our vice president, Joyce Majuru. She's married to a Spaniard. They live in Europe. This one gold deal is worth $35 million a month to the family. We have the Chinese in the country. They are Mugabe's best friends ever. And they're in control of our diamond fields. Huge diamond fields were recently discovered. The Chinese control them along with Zimbabwe's military. They're industrial diamonds, so much beloved by the Chinese. And disappointingly, the world is not condemning this despite proof of human rights abuses and massive rigging of elections. Zimbabwe was recently given the honor of hosting the United Nations World Tourism Conference at Victoria Falls 2 weeks ago. This is Mugabe being congratulated, and the United Nations gave him the chair of the Africa Tourism Commission. And this is Mugabe with his SADC brothers, Southern African Development Community. They recently held a SADC summit. When Mugabe arrived, he got a standing ovation, and these SADC leaders have also caused for us to be closed down. So I think we can be quite proud of the fact that we really get on the nose of just about every politician in Africa. And Zimbabwe always refers to us as pirates. We are a pirate radio station. It drives them nuts. So we do find that the only way to maintain our sanity is to maintain a sense of humor. So that was a recent Christmas card, and we don't think that Mugabe necessarily found it quite as amusing as our listeners did, but it cheered us up. Thank you.
Gerry, talking about the situation in Zimbabwe is always, it just really reminds you of why you're in this industry and why you're broadcasting. And just the whole feeling of everyone being together, I think it's always good to be reminded about why we love radio.
Just an amazing story, which is, again, really sort of engaging to sort of really get your interest and sort of open you up to perhaps radio that you wouldn't necessarily know.
What it really made me understand is that actually the message is more important than the medium.
This is Next Radio.
With Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.